Hello, so this here is a new thing. I just thought people might be curious to see how a cartoon is made. So here we are. This is a new thing for me too, actually, because I've been drawing cartoons since the age of 14, and that's decades, and many, many thousands of drawings for newspapers and magazines and books and, you know, goodness knows what all. Cartoonists work pretty much for whoever will employ them. Not to mention publishing your own stuff. But this is a new departure because I'm, for the first time today, this is day one of noodling around with a possible project to illustrate a book by my wife. And I've never done that before. I've never illustrated my wife's work before. So you're never too old to try something new. There's always time for a new beginning. And I'm quite excited about this. Now, let me just quickly show you, if you've ever wondered how cartoons are put together, the answer is lots of ways, but certainly this is one way. The idea we started with was a teacup, a broken teacup putting itself back together, which is kind of a neat idea. It's reminiscent of perhaps the early drawings of John Tenniel at the turn of last century, those beautiful fine pen and ink drawings where it was very popular to bring inanimate objects to life and give them life and dimension and motion and characteristics normally attributed to humans. That was kind of a popular style around the 1890s or something, and this is right out of that book. So I kind of started with the idea of channeling Tenniel, who, by the way, you'll know best as the illustrator for Alice in Wonderland. All those wonderful original illustrations in that book are Tenniel. So to start with, I figured the first thing we're going to need is a teacup. So this is the teacup, and as you can see, I've already drawn in some fracture lines on that teacup, and the idea now is to reassemble that teacup in a fractured form in a way that makes it believable to the eye and gives it dimension, for which these things are very useful. I think probably most artists, certainly almost every cartoonist has one of these. This is a light board. Here, I'll turn it off and then on again. That's off, that's on. So you can see there's a strong light coming from below it. So clearly, if you put a piece of paper on there, you can trace over it. So the first step is to put the teacup on the light board and now do tracings over it. But of course, I'm going to do it in different orientations to make different pieces of a shattered teacup believable in different locations. And the beauty part is, I know that if I shade in each of these areas as I trace them, you're about to see the trace, eventually I'm going to end up with everything shaded, the whole teacup. Or if there's a piece missing, it's done intentionally. So it doesn't look kind of subtly wrong to the eye. You don't quite know why, but you know it's wrong. The eye is very, very smart. So this is what we get when we do that. And this is just a matter of, hang on, let me move it into the light there. That's better. This is just a matter of moving the teacup into different locations and drawing different fragments in different places. And what I'm being careful of to do here as well is, although it's a cartoon and it's fantasized reality, it's an imitation of reality, not the real thing. Some of the fundamental things in reality that we're used to, you have to keep or it looks funny. And one of these is gravity. So I've been very careful. The heaviest part of the broken teacup is going to be the piece with the handle. So I've been very careful, there we are, I've been very careful, that's better, to have the piece with the handle kind of rock and roll to the bottom and then reach its stable position as it would in real life. So this is at the bottom, and the touch points are the two heaviest places. The bottom of the handle and the bottom of this part of the cup here are clearly going to rest flat on the ground because it's going to find its center of gravity. So that is the anchor for the drawing. The whole drawing's built around something that has believable visual grammar, something that could actually exist in the universe. So once we do that, the next thing we do is we transfer that to a board, and you can see here that I have glued on some things to the board, but I'm going to peel it off temporarily for you. So the top layer, which is just a blank sheet of paper, gone, and the layer below it is the tracing I'm going to use for the final drawing. And here you can see that I have animated this, and finally it's a cartoon, and there are arms, little arms sticking out of the teacup and a pot of glue as it puts itself back together. So now it's this bizarre little half living, half inanimate creature that becomes animated when it's in distress and is slowly reassembling itself. So the next thing to do is we put this squarely Just tacking it in 2 places is plenty. There's no need ever to overdo it. So just tack that on there, and then of course we'll just tack a blank piece of paper. Your realignment and your centering of your drawings can all be done in the tracing process. Even if the original drawing you didn't bother too much about centering it, you can realign and recenter as you go. You end up with a beautifully centered drawing that looks like it was done by magic, scans easily, something you can show to an editor and not be embarrassed about. So the next thing we're going to do is, all this work so far has been done with a good old HB pencil and a good old stapler eraser. Quality erasers are well worth investing in. The cheap nasty ones leave a residue, they damage your paper, and they can smear your drawing. And they last for years. I mean, I used to have this one for 10 years. So now, of course, a pen. What pen? I've really struggled with this over the years, like what pen to use. Every artist has a different view. Some prefer a brush, others use computers. I have never been able to go past this though, and this is just your basic Sharpie permanent with a really tight top permanent marker. There you go. You can see the tip nicely outlined if I do that against something that's clear. So that's a 0.1mm marker, and that's my favorite kind of marker to use. And so now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pen and I'm going to just ink over the top, and we'll end up with the final drawing. And so with the magic of video, I'm going to come back in a minute and show you what that looks like. So here we are doing the actual drawing, and even here, it's not a brainless exercise. It looks like it's just, you know, a monkey could do it. But anyone who's ever seen a drawing that was traced and had that look about it, it looked traced, will know that there's a shakiness of line that betrays tracing. So the trick when you draw this is to actually draw it, to keep your artist head permanently engaged, and to remember that you're really doing a drawing, you're not doing a tracing, and therefore that you're trying to keep that flair, that sense of life and energy in what you draw, even though there are lines beneath your pen. But the tracing is not, it's not something that you could just do without any input at all from the creative side of your brain. Really, you are doing a drawing. You're doing an original drawing. This is what the readers see after all. They see your drawing, they don't see your tracing. So you have to keep some life and line in your tracing. And rather than think of yourself as a person doing a tracing, as you do this, think of yourself as a person doing a drawing. So the teacup is well engaged, and we'll come back a bit later and we'll look at the finished thing. I don't know why, but I'm imagining this creature that is half teacup and half bizarre self-reassembling creature. And you can see one here, and you'll see it a bit later, as a creature with skinny arms. It wouldn't have thick, muscly arms, I don't think, because it's a teacup. It's a delicate thing. So I imagine a teacup come to life would have teacup-like properties. In other words, it would be delicate and fine and fussy and precise, and everything is like everything in just the right place. So that's the energy I'm trying to capture with these spindly, fussy little arms as it slowly puts itself together. I'm trying to capture a fourth dimension so that you have not just a picture, but almost a movie in your head, a sense of what happened just before, a sense of what's going to happen just after, a sense of time and motion. Or to quote the old poem, gesture without motion is what I'm looking for here. Let's see what happens. So now we're beginning to approach something that gives a sense of the final thing. Line thickness is really important in a drawing, and that has to do with the size of the drawing and how big you should make your original, and therefore what kind of line thickness you want on your pen is, again, something I struggled with for years. I think we all did. Finally coming to a simple conclusion, which is, to me, the easiest size of drawing to do with the hand is a hand-sized drawing. It seems like it's hand-friendly, and you have the best control then. So for a hand-friendly drawing, 0.1mm is a nice thickness for me, and this is what we're getting at here. And I'm just wondering if that line underneath joining those two pieces should be there, and it should. And I haven't drawn it in, so it's just a matter of hold this and take a quick peek, and yep, the line's there underneath. So there you go. Wait a minute, bit more pressure. That's better. That's in. And now you're beginning to get a sense of whether this drawing is going to have life or not. And there are a couple of decisions coming up, which I'll tell you about in a minute, as to how you might want to just finish that or transmit life. But let's get the lines down. Let's finish that. Working with the light board turned off, and that's because I'm writing the glue on the glue pot, the little label. And it's much easier to control the finer elements of line thickness if you don't have the confusion of the image from below coming up and projecting into the eye. So I'm just getting I of course got the basics of the layout down, but to just do the touch-ups and really make that clearly read glue, G-L-U-E, with everything the same thickness, I'm finding that just a little bit of subtlety with the use of the light really helps. And here it is back again. That'll look better in the final. Let's finish the lining in. I'm going to put some motion sprints in because this is really supposed to be just a seething mass of arms slowly putting itself together. I'll show you what I mean. You probably know what I mean by motion sprint, but if not, we'll just draw an arm like this with an armpit and an elbow like that, and let's put the fingers in the expressive position like that. So there's an arm right there. But if we want to suggest gesture, like this person's reaching out to catch a ball or something like that, then you can put some little marks in there, just like this, having regard to the way in which the masses of the body would really move, some to the left, some to the right. But if we put in motion sprints like this, that's what that is. It just conveys that sense of from there to there. Since we're not doing an animation today, we have to kind of suggest it. I think this drawing could use some motion sprints, so I'm gonna put them in. We'll put a couple in behind the fingers. Fingers are very expressive. When you perform for an audience, I'm a great believer in wearing black pants and a black jacket. And if you don't like black, pick another color. But what you're looking to emphasize is the parts of the body that convey emotion. And that's always the face and hands. And with the hands, it's the fingers. So in a cartoon, especially where there's no face, as there's none here, the fingers are very important. And we're emphasizing the pieces that are moving, which are the arms, but not, of course, the teacup itself. Except that I broke my own rule by putting 2 motion sprints in near the handle, because I want to suggest the teacup reacting to the forces that are put upon it and just rocking. Just a little bit. It's very subtle. No more than a customer in a restaurant who's loving what they're eating is going to look up and say, well, that clearly contains basil, tarragon, lemon, thyme, a touch of Tabasco, and 9 other ingredients. They won't know, but that doesn't mean that those things aren't important. They're sensed. They're part of the overall experience, just as we don't expect the viewer to dissect a drawing and say, well, he's done this and this and that, and this is why. But the overall, hopefully, impression is enhanced. And now we come to an interesting problem, which is the frame. So I like breaking frames in places. In other words, rather than just draw a box around it with the cartoon inside, you'll see in a minute that I like to draw the box a bit smaller and have the cartoon kind of jump out of it. And this is known in both performance and art as breaking the fourth wall. And it's something that we're all taught not to do when we're young. If you're the actor who turns to the audience and smirks, the director's going to slap you and say, that's not in the script. It ruins the moment, is the point. It takes people out of the fantasy. It breaks the story. Same with drawing. But like all rules, they are made to be broken. And it's okay to break a rule as long as you know that you're doing it. So I'm going to try breaking the fourth wall here and see what that looks like, and see if that doesn't just give it a bit of lift and life and make it jump out of the page towards you a bit and suggest that third dimension. Let's see how we end up. By the way, for my drawings, it's a hand-drawn frame. It's always been a hand-drawn frame, so it's a tiny bit shaky that says hand-drawn. You can, of course, just use a straight box to contain your cartoons. You can do it on a computer. But I like cartoons to have a bit of a handmade feel. I think that matches the theme of the actual drawing itself, which is, after all, hand-drawn. So in order to do this, I use a simple trick, which is you just get a clean piece of paper. You don't need to waste a new piece of paper, just something that's relatively clean, something I use for lines, and just put that down on your drawing so that when you rest your hand on your drawing, you don't smudge it. So let's get the frame in. Let's see what that looks like with the frame with the broken fourth wall. By the way, you can always fix a mistake in a drawing these days usually by scanning it in and then fixing the drawing once you scan it. But I don't like to do that. You know, just as in the old days, if a sculpture wasn't quite right, often the sculptor would just fix that with wax, and the wax looked like marble, and they'd paint it over, and you'd never know. But the greats never did that. Michelangelo would never turn in a sculpture that was fixed with wax. If he made a mistake, which would be rare, he'd start again. And that's where the term sincerity comes from. When somebody's sincere, it comes from sans serre, which means without wax. I kind of feel the same about drawings. I'd like to get it right the first time rather than fix it later if time's tight, sure. But that way you also have something nice in your portfolio and an original. And you know, I hate to do it, but sometimes it's right to do it, and you can give originals to people and they really love them. And of course, if the original is sans serre, well, it's going to be a whole lot better. As you can see, I've got the frame about 2/3 done. Let's finish that and let's see what we've got here. All right, so here we have a finished and rather bizarre looking drawing of a shattered teacup, which under the stress of realizing that it's shattered has come to life and is now putting itself back together. So the light keeps changing on me because in a studio you're always better off working in natural light, and that's what I'm doing. This is natural light. It's late afternoon, golden hour, perfect time for natural light. So here we have a drawing of a teacup putting itself back together, and that might be fractabunt depending on how this video is being shot, but that word says glue, so you get the idea. So that's what we've got. The final stage now is going to be the cleanup, because although actually with this method the cleanup's a lot less because you don't have your construction lines, these underlying pencil construction lines here, because the original was done on a light box. I wouldn't often do that, but this is predominantly because the shapes of the teacup are quite complicated and they have to interlock and be complete. Otherwise it just instinctively looks wrong. So very light cleanup just to make sure I haven't put one line just a fraction there when it should have been here, you know, that kind of stuff. And then we're going to have the finished article. And I think probably what I'm going to do is finish with a picture of just the finished article. I can already see a couple of things that need to be fixed in the cleanup. But what we should do is finish with a picture of the finished article just as a still image so that you can see it. So those are the steps: clean up and then final art. We're very nearly done here. Oh, and one last little thing. even though it's on the tracing below, I forgot to sign it. And I'm not the only one. This is something other artists do as well, and some have famously so. You know, if you could find an original Oliphant that was published in the Washington Post and Pat forgot to sign it, to an art dealer, if it can be proven that it's an Oliphant, if he's provenanced it or something, it might actually be worth more because it's rare, and you really try not to do that. So always remember to sign your work. Let's just get that done. And there you go, turn the light off. Yeah, that looks fine, that's signed. Okay, clean up and final. All right, and as the sun moves across my window here, this work is pretty much done. It's clean. It's ready to come off the board. And this being the modern world, the next step, generally speaking, is going to be to scan it and then to submit it. And I'm going to scan this in 600 dots per inch, which is a high quality printing standard, meaning it could be printed at this size in a book or a magazine. It won't be. It'll be printed about 2/3 size. 66% is usually what I'm aiming for in a final. But even if it was printed full size, it would look good. There would be no jaggies if it's scanned at 600 GPI. So there's the final work in the rays of the setting sun. And I'm going to show that to you one more time as a clean still image. But this is the end of the talking, and this is John drawing a cartoon that might be a prototype for a book and a brand new project. Signing off and thanking you for watching me today. Pick up a pen, have a go yourself. It's more fun than just about anything. Bye.